A Federation ambassador is tasked with opening diplomatic relations with the planet of Eminiar 7. And he and the Enterprise arrive at the planet only to be told that they'd love to, but the problem is there's this war going on with the other inhabited planet in our solar system. Thing is, the war's been going on for 500 years. They lose up to 3 million people a year to this thing. But Kirk and crew look around and the place is spotless. What the heck kind of war is this? Well, Kirk and crew are about to find out, because they're about to get a taste of Armageddon. Hit it. Hey! 3 major guest stars this week. First, we got Gene Lyons as Ambassador Robert Fox. He didn't do too much science fiction outside of Star Trek, though he did show up in an episode of The Twilight Zone. He tended to play military guys, sheriffs, and cops in various guest starring roles, but he's mainly known for playing Commissioner Dennis Randall on 66 episodes of Ironside, alongside other series star and Star Trek alum Barbara Anderson, a.k.a. Lenore Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs Caridian. Playing Mia 3 is actor Barbara Babcock. This lady is an acting powerhouse. She did 16 episodes of Dallas, 17 episodes of Hill Street Blues, 98 episodes of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman as Dorothy Jennings, and appears in such films as Far and Away and Space Cowboys. Plus, we've already met her as the voice of Trelane's mother in The Squire of Gothos, and she'll make 3 more voice appearances and 1 more on-camera appearances on Star Trek. Last but not least, as a non-7, we have David Opatoshu. 148 credits on his resume, this guy showed up in such genre shows as Time Tunnel, The $6 Million Man and The Bionic Woman, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, and Alien Nation, the series. Plus, he was in The Torn Curtain with Paul Newman and Julie Andrews, Death of a Gunfighter with Carol O'Connor and Star Trek alum Morgan Woodward, and Exodus, also with Paul Newman and Eva Marie Saint. So they pulled some heavy hitters for this episode. But enough about that. Let's get into the plot. We start with the Enterprise arriving in the star system where a planet called Eminiar 7 is located. Kirk's log tells us they're there to establish diplomatic relations with them. They send word to the Eminians, but the Eminians are leaving them on red. As Kirk is signing an autograph, a guy in civilian clothes, what looks kind of like what those fish people from Next Generation wear, shows up on the bridge. Kirk addresses the guy as ambassador and is telling him that the Eminians ain't picking up the phone when Uhura says she's getting a message from him. She says that the message is just code 710 over and over. The ambassador asks what the hell that means, and Kirk tells him that it means under no circumstances are they to approach that planet. We learn the ambassador's name is Fox when he flat out tells Kirk to ignore the code 710 thing and go in anyways. Very diplomatic. Fox says lots of people have gotten killed in this area, and if they had had a port on Eminiar, maybe that wouldn't have happened. So he's hell-bent on getting it. Not big on foreign sovereignty, this guy. Kirk says that might start a war. Fox says, I don't care. Kirk says, well, I friggin' do. This is my ship, jackass. Fox says, what part of I don't care didn't you parse? This mission gives me command, so you and your ship need to get in there and let me ambassadorize shit, okay? Scotty shoots Fox a look that would detonate a tribble at 100 paces, and the ambassador leaves the bridge. After he's gone, Spock walks up and says, sheesh, what an asshole. Kirk orders a yellow alert, and we roll opening credits. When we come back, we're in orbit around Eminiar 7. Spock tells us these people are pretty advanced. They have spaceships and whatnot, but they ain't never been outside of their solar system despite having the capability to do so. He also says that about 50 years ago, the USS Valiant came here and reported that these guys were at war with their closest planetary neighbor. Also, they didn't return from that. Fox shows up and has heard that Kirk is beaming down without him, taking a security detail to scout it out before letting Fox go himself. Fox tries to protest and Kirk tells him to cram it. Spock says he's found a good place to drop Kirk and his team, but he says the Eminians haven't acted like they even know the Enterprise is here, even though that can't be right because they scanned us when we got here. Weird, right? Kirk says they'll take hand phasers so they don't freak nobody out and tells Scotty he's got the con. Down on the planet, we see a lady and 2 members of Devo getting ready to accept the guests from the Enterprise. Kirk, Spock, a yeoman, and 2 security guys beam down in a courtyard, and Madam Soft Focus over here greets them. Introductions all around, and we learn that her name is Mia 3. She protests that Kirk wasn't supposed to come to their planet, but Kirk says he had orders to do so. So, here we are. She says it's dangerous, but I'm going to let my boy Anan 7 and the High Council drop that exposition on you. Follow me. They reach the council room, and the High Council is revealed to very dramatic music. Anan 7 gets up wearing a fresh Klingon pelt, and Kirk intros his team. Anan 7 intros himself and asks, "What do you want?" Kirk says, "We want diplomatic relations." Anan says, "Can't do it, Sally." Kirk says, "What for?" Anan says, "The war, that's what for." Kirk's like, "That's still going on?" Anan says, "It's been going on for 500 years. Spock don't say nothing, but you can tell he's smelling something hinky. Kirk says, "It don't look like you guys are at war." Spock says, "Yeah, everything looks great. You guys got a lot of amenities. There's microbreweries, artisanal coffee shops, there's a vibrant local theater and music scene. What are you talking about? Ain't no war here." Anan says, "Yeah, and we got a great farmer's market too, but we're still at war. 1 to 3 million people get capped every friggin' year." Spock wants to know who they're fighting. Anan says it's Vendikar, the 3rd planet in their system, making it presumably Eminiar 3, but I guess that would be too confusing. So it's Vendikar. Says it used to be a colony of theirs, and now they're the arch-enemy. Colonies, am I right? Just then, an alarm goes off, and Anan says Vendikar is attacking. A door opens to a kind of NORAD-looking room with lots of blinky light computers. As Mia 3 is explaining that attacks are common, one is registering on the big board. She indicates that the city itself has been hit. Kirk don't hear nothing. He asks Spock, and he says he don't hear nothing either. Spock gets Yeoman Tamara to check her tricorder for any kind of radiation, but she comes up with bupkis. Kirk asks what kind of weapons caused this supposed hit, and Mia says it's fusion bombs apparently beamed into the air above their targets. Clever. Kirk still can't figure what the hell these weirdos are talking about, so he calls up Scotty on the Enterprise and asks if he's seeing anything weird going on the planet. He says nope, everything looks peaceful and boring. Kirk and team seem to be moving from a state of confusion to a state of apprehension that they might be in the middle of a whole planet full of whack jobs. Right as Kirk is about to suggest everybody have a big old lithium milkshake, another supposed hit is registered on the big board. It ain't apparent where it hit because the map on the board ain't that great, but Anan talks about how, quote, they was warned, and his buddy says it's just like it happened 50 years ago. Anan says better get some security guys up here. Kirk and team are still standing around with big cartoon question marks on their heads when Anan joins the party and laments that the attack was a brutal one. Lots of dead people. Kirk says, "What attack? Nothing blew up. My ship can see the whole place. If a squirrel farted down here, Scotty would know about it. Nothing happened. What's the matter with you?" Anan insists that 500,000 people just got greased and then tells his buddy to launch a counterattack. Well, Spock has put 2 and 2 together and realized that this whole war is fought with computers. Anan confirms this but says that the casualties are still real. They're logged and recorded, and the people who are marked dead in the attack gotta go to disintegration booths and whack themselves within 24 hours. Anan says they've been at war for 500 years. The place would be a smoldering pile of rubble if they fought like regular people. So they came up with this. A way to keep fighting without wrecking the joint. Preserves the culture and whatnot. Kirk is in full-on you have got to be kidding me mode and says you people just waltz into microwave ovens and fry yourselves just because you're told to? Anan says, yeah, we're all in on this crap. Spock says there does seem to be a certain logic to this, but when Anan says thank you for your support, Spock shuts that shit down immediately. He gets it, but it's still stupid. Anan says, well, since you at least get it, I've got some bad news for you. Your ship blew up in the attack. So, if you could get everybody down here for some microwave popcorn, that'd be great. Just to make sure they come to the party, we're gonna lock you guys up as hostages. The security guys start to reach for their phasers, and for some reason Kirk stops them from going all John Wick on the Conehead crew over here. After a commercial break, we find our gang in a sitting room with a deep shag throw rug and the biggest ashtray I have ever seen. Mia comes in and asks if they need anything. Kirk says how long you got. How about we start with getting Anand's happy ass down here so I can explain how many very real guns are on my ship and how they're itching to shave that goatee off his head. Mia once again talks about duty and mentions that she's been marked as a casualty too and has 24 hours to do the lean cuisine shuffle herself. Kirk is like, you're gonna nuke yourself? Just like that? She says she don't want to, but if she don't, then Vendikar would have to start shooting real bombs at him and blow up more than just people. Ain't this better? Kirk is like, what the hell are you talking about? No. She goes, pfft, foreigners, and leaves with the droogs. As they go, though, Kirk and team get a good look at the key and lock mechanism that's keeping them in there. Could be useful. Up on the ship, McCoy and Scotty are talking about how something's gotta be up. They haven't heard from the team and they're not picking up the phone. Just then, though, Uhura says she's getting a call from Kirk. Scotty picks up and says, we've been trying to call you guys for hours. What gives? Kirk says, hey, it's all good. The Eminians say they love the idea of being friends with us, and they'd love nothing more than for everybody on the Enterprise to come say hey and check out their new microwaves. Scotty says, you sure about that? And we cut to the planet's surface and we see that it ain't Kirk what's talking to Scotty, but it's Anand 7 making Bill Hader look like Gilbert Gottfried with his impression of Captain Kirk. Rest in peace, Gilbert. With his killer Kirk, Anand tells Scotty that sending all the people down is in order. Scotty's like, okay, cool, and hangs up. But we see that he don't buy that for a second. McCoy agrees that what they just heard was horse shit. Just to make sure, he gets the ship's computer to check it out, and while the computer is impressed with the impression and would like to know if Anand does a decent walking, that wasn't Kirk. Cut to the planet, and we're in the middle of a conversation between the real Kirk and Spock. Kirk asks if Spock can, quote, do it. Spock says he'll try. Well, what he's doing is attempting a mind meld with the guard through the wall in order to control the guy and get him to open the door. So Spock cozies up to the wall that looks like it's got that popcorn ceiling stuff on it and gets to work on connecting to the Conehead's Wi-Fi. The connection is good, and pretty soon he's zombie walking into the parlor, and Kirk brings the choppy chop, and now he has a Conehead costume, ho ho ho. Kirk says we gotta find our phones and contact the ship, and we need more than just this guy's gun, so we're gonna have to smack some more Coneheads. The whole gang creeps around and comes upon a microwave that's already cooking up some piping hot Conehead souffle. They watch the guy kiss his wife, get in the microwave, another Conehead sets it to Conehead and hits start. When it opens back up, no Conehead. Spock hits us with an as you know kind of line, pointing out that the microwave appears to be killing people. He ain't the best science officer in Starfleet for nothing, folks. Well, as the gang is approaching the microwave, they bump into Mia on her way to get reheated to death. Kirk says no microwaving for you. Mia's upset. She was really looking forward to spinning around on the little plate thing. Kirk holds her back and tells Spock to go fetch the blaster off of that Conehead over there. Spock is on it. Spock pulls the oldest trick in the Vulcan book, just under your shoes are untied, and nerve pinches his ass. He grabs his blaster as he collapses, and nobody seems to know what to do about this. Seriously, they all stand around watching this and they don't say nothing. Friggin' New Yorkers over here. He walks back to Kirk with his new blaster, and Kirk tells the people to get away from the microwave. They do, and Kirk goes ham on the radar range, which smokes up the joint worse than cooking popcorn using the popcorn setting, am I right? In the council chambers, Anand is hearing about Kirk blowing up Microwave 12 and running around with blasters. Anand tells the Conehead crew to find these microwave-shooting jackasses and bring them in, and also shoot the big spaceship up there while you're at it. The Eminians apparently let loose with everything they've got, and up on the ship, Scotty is like, hey, they're taking pot shots at us, what gives? He and McCoy discuss what they should do. Turns out, phasers can't be fired through the Enterprise's shields this week, but don't worry, it's just for this week. He's mentioning that he could drop a few photon torpedoes on these guys when Ambassador Fox, remember him, comes in and puts the kibosh on that idea. He says, you don't get to grease them. The shields are up, so we're fine. Give them a call and let them know I'm going to call them later. You know those guys that send you an email and then call you to let you know they sent you an email? He's one of those guys. The gang gets back to the parlor, apparently after some shenanigans we didn't get to see because they now have 2 more blasters, 2 Conehead costumes, and an Eminian communicator which Spock says sucks pretty bad, but he might be able to rig it so they can call the ship. They also still have Mia. Kirk wants her to tell him how to get to the war room, but she don't want to do that. Kirk says he's trying to stop the war, so nobody's got to get microwaved. She's hesitant, but She's a blonde in soft focus, and he's James T. Kirk. So what do you think happens here? Cut to the council room, and Anan is at a loss to figure out what to do. Just then, a guy comes in and says there's this douchey-sounding dude on the horn, says he's an ambassador from Earth or something, wants to talk to you. Anan ponders aloud whether being honest or lying to save your life is more moral. Considering he already impersonated the captain to trick everybody on the Enterprise to come kill themselves, I'd say he's asking a question he's already decided the answer to. He picks up the phone and talks to Fox. Fox is like, hey, we come in peace. What's with the shooting our ship and stealing our people thing? Anan says, oops, that was a misunderstanding. We totally promised to quit trying to murder yous, and maybe we send you a fruit basket or something. It should be pointed out that Scotty is clearly buying none of this. Fox, though, hook, line, and sinker. Anan goes on to say, if you could just lower your shields, we'll get that fruit basket on the way to you. Mr. DePaul says they've quit with the disruptor beams, but Scotty says keep the shields where they are. Anan puts the phone on mute and says to his buddy, just in case you didn't already know he was trying to pull a fast one, hey, when they turn the shields off, light 'em up. He hits unmute, slings some more bullshit at Fox, and after all that, Anan hangs up. On the ship, Fox sanctimoniously talks about how diplomats are smart and Starfleet people are stupid. I'm paraphrasing here, but he also orders Scotty to lower the shields as a show of faith. Scotty says, to hell with that noise, I'm not lowering squat. McCoy comes in on Scotty's side and points out the whole friggin' episode so far and stops just shy of calling Fox a moron. Fox threatens Scotty with sending his ass to a penal colony, but Scotty says you do what you think you gotta do. But the shields are staying up. Fox stomps off in a huff. Once he's gone, McCoy is like, well, I hope you're right, because if you're not, you're kind of boned. Scotty agrees. On a planet, Anan is pouring up some Eminiar Mad Dog when Kirk shows up. Anan calls him a barbarian, but then says, aren't we all? Claims some common barbaric heritage, but Kirk says, we're not so weird about it like yous guys. Anan says, what do you want? Kirk says he wants to talk to his ship. Anan says, bite me. Kirk says, how's about I disruptor your ass instead? Anan says, here, have some Mad Dog. As Kirk is getting his drink, Anan hits the Starship Captain is holding me hostage button. Kirk points out that Anan is screwing with a military force that could wipe his planet off the map. Anan says, well, that's why you can't talk to your ship. Kirk says, oh, I don't need a ship. Anan can't figure out quite what he's talking about. Kirk demands the communicators again, and Anan actually tells him where they are. Kirk starts after him, but then goes, hey, wait a minute. And instead of just walking out of the room, he throws Anan out the door first. Good move, as it turns out, because Anan goes careening into a conehead who was waiting for Kirk. The button and all. There's a Kirk fight with 3 or 4 coneheads. To Kirk's credit, he don't start blasting. The coneheads end up getting the upper hand and knock Kirk out. Anan gets the coneheads to take him to the council room. We as the audience all look at each other like we missed something because suddenly Fox and some other dude in civvies beams down to the courtyard. Don't know how that happened, but Scotty's gonna be pissed. Anan and his boy meet the ambassador and his boy and tell them, welcome to Eminiar. If you'll step this way, we can get yous into a microwave and blow yous up. Hate it for you, but travel don't come without risks, you know? Fox seems rather taken aback that he and his lackey only made it a few seconds into his diplomatic mission before the people he was supposed to negotiate with murdered him. To be fair, that does gotta be a record. Over in the parlor, Spock has gotten the Eminian communicator working. He calls up the ship and tells Scotty, don't send nobody down here. Scotty says Fox already went down. Spock goes, that figures. Go out to maximum phaser range, we'll be in touch. Then Spock takes the 2 security guys in conehead costumes and goes looking for Kirk. We cut to real coneheads trying to force Ambassador Fox into a microwave, and Spock and the fake coneheads show up acting like real coneheads. There's not a lot of build-up to them springing the trap, but they knock all the coneheads out and rescue Fox and his nameless buddy. Then Spock blows up the microwave. Fox tells Spock that he heard that Kirk is being held in the council room, and Spock asks him if he's through being a dick. And he says, all right, fine. Cut to said council room, and Anan is once again trying to convince Kirk that the crew of the Enterprise microwaving themselves is actually a really good thing, and they would really appreciate it very much. Kirk continues to tell Anan to pound sand. Anan says if they don't do that, stuff's gonna blow up, People will get all splody and there's going to be guts and brains everywhere. It will really suck. Kirk's like, yeah, that sounds bad. Anan says, what kind of guy just lets that happen? Kirk says, me, remember that whole barbarian thing? Yeah, and guess what? I'm just getting started. Anan decides to call the Enterprise, and when Scotty picks up the phone, Kirk yells for him to execute General Order 24 in 2 hours. The Conehead's wrestling back into his seat, and Anan starts posturing, talking about, we got your boy and his buddies, we're going to kill him if you don't come down here and kill yourselves, yada yada yada. Then he hangs up. Anan looks all proud of himself until Kirk tells him that General Order 24 means Scotty's going to pull an Alderaan on Eminiar 7 in 2 hours. In response, Anan orders his people to open fire on the Enterprise, but it's too late. They're out of range. Uh-oh. In the corridors, Spock's team run into some Coneheads and exchange a little pew-pew. They get the Coneheads, but one of them must have gotten off a lucky shot because Fox's buddy goes down. No one seems to give a rat's ass. Cut to the council room, and Anand's lackey says that Vendikar is getting pissed that they ain't been nuking enough dudes, and is starting to think that Eminiar don't want to nuke dudes. What, you too good to nuke dudes? You want us to nuke them for you? Scotty chooses this moment to call Anand up and tell him not to start watching any Lord of the Rings movies, because you ain't gonna be able to finish them, like even the theatrical cuts. You might be able to squeeze into Gremlins, but you'd better start now, and I'd fast forward through the credits if I was you. While Anan is looking up the running time for the Gremlins, Kirk rolls a natural 20 on a dex check and subdues the whole place in one move. He covers Anan and company with 2 Conehead blasters just in time for Spock's team to ride to what they thought was going to be the rescue. But Kirk's got a Kirk, you know. Kirk and Spock open the door to the war room and cue the Kirk speech. You guys have made war so clean and orderly you don't have any reason to stop. Well, let's see what we can do about that. Spock lays out which computers do what and tells Kirk the best one to blow up. After getting their phasers back, Kirk celebrates by using his to blow up Eminiar 7's whole way of life. Sometimes you don't got time to talk the computer to death, you know? We're on a time over here. Well, the computers blow up real good, and Anan has almost lost his friggin' mind. Kirk delivers the second half of his Kirk speech and tells Anan, you're in trouble. The war just got real. So you better fight it, or maybe make peace? What do you think? Fox, who's been so friggin' effective up to this point, offers to oversee peace negotiations. Anan shows Fox to the red phone they have with Vendikar, and presumably things go well. Kirk calls the ship, cancels the Alderaan, and they beam up. In the epilogue, we find out that negotiations are underway and do, in fact, look good. Spock says, that was risky. Kirk says, I had a feeling it would work. Spock says, feelings are stupid. Kirk says, your mother's stupid. Everybody laughs, and we roll credits. Great stuff. Lots of great stuff in this episode. The big concept stuff we'll save until the end, but let's talk about some great lines. Too many to list them all here, but we'll go with the top 5.
Sir, there's a multi-legged creature crawling on your shoulder.
I love when they find ways to make Spock funny that don't break his character. I don't know what to call this kind of humor. It's not quite the Data talking about igniting the midnight petroleum thing where he's misusing a human Saiyan exactly. They do that, but that ain't what this is. Just Spock being Spock, I guess. SBS humor. Fortunately, we haven't established that Vulcans don't lie yet, so he can get away with this right now. And I think we're all hip to the fact that the idea that Vulcans don't lie is itself total horseshit, right? That's more of a clever Vulcan PR tactic than an actual trivia fact. They ain't stupid.
What are you doing, Mr. Spock? Practicing a peculiar variety of diplomacy, sir.
Another great Spock line. This is part SBS humor and part just garden variety sardonic humor. Plus it goes along very well with
diplomats. The best diplomat I know is a fully activated phaser bank.
I'm usually not one that enjoys when we take a contemporary human Saiyan or sentiment and future it up unnecessarily. But this line coming from Scotty just feels right.
A killer first, a builder second. A hunter, a warrior, and let's be honest, a murderer. That is our joint heritage, is it not?
We're a little less cold-blooded about it than you are.
Anan 7's defense of the situation with Vendikar. It's an unavoidable and deadly consequence of being human, or in this case, Armenian. Therefore, we just accept that a few million will die every year and we just make it as painless as possible. What are you gonna do? It's who we are. Sounds stupid, right? But it don't exactly sound implausible, does it? More on that later.
Death, destruction, disease, horror. That's what war is all about, Anan. That's what makes it a thing to be avoided. You've made it neat and painless. It's instinctive. The instinct can be fought. We're human beings with the blood of a million savage years on our hands. But we can stop it. We can admit that we're killers, but we're not going to kill today. That's all it takes. Knowing that we're not going to kill today.
The Kirk speech of this episode, delivered in 2 parts. Kirk counters Anand's surrender to our animal nature by pointing out that we are in control of our behavior and our destiny, regardless of our animalistic heritage. The Bene Gesserit would be proud. He acknowledges that it ain't easy, but all you gotta do is say, I ain't gonna be a murdering scumbag today. That's it. Just today. Tomorrow, well, you deal with tomorrow, you know? As Kirk speeches go, this is a good one. And that great touch about not being a killer today was a line contributed to the script by Gene Kuhn in a rewrite. Credit where credit is due there. Good stuff.
I had a feeling that they would do anything to avoid it, even talk peace.
Feeling is not much to go on.
Sometimes a feeling, Mr. Spock, is all we humans have to go on.
Captain, you almost make me believe in luck.
Why, Mr. Spock? You almost make me believe in miracles.
The episode ender and a fun bit of banter between Kirk and Spock. Basically, Spock saying, holy crap, that really could have gone very, very poorly, and Kirk going, hey, Kirk's got a Kirk, baby. We didn't get a lot of Uhura in this episode. Sulu ain't even in it at all, and not even very much McCoy. But we did have a character step up and take a larger than usual role, at least thus far, and that's our boy, Monty Scott. Scotty was in rare form in this episode, and I love it. Snarky with Fox, ready to throw down to get his people back, loyal to Kirk. Scotty really is front and center in this episode, and I love to see it. Try as I might, I can't confirm this as being true or even find where this originated, if it was a story Jimmy Doohan told at a convention or what. But apparently, Scotty's defiance to Fox when Fox ordered that the shields be dropped and the Enterprise return to a peaceful posture was inspired by an actual incident in Doohan's own military career. While he was a lieutenant in the Royal Canadian Artillery, he received an order from a visiting colonel during a training exercise that Doohan knew would put his people in danger, so he refused, allegedly saying, "No, sir, I will not," like Scotty's line in the episode. Like Fox does with Scotty, Doohan was threatened with a court-martial, but still remained defiant. And also just like with Scotty, Doohan's own direct superiors backed him up, and he was later promoted to captain. But again, this isn't documented anywhere with solid evidence and has kind of become the stuff of legend. I don't believe Doohan even mentions it in his book, Beam Me Up, Scotty. Knowing Jimmy Doohan just from interviews and reputation, though, I don't have any trouble believing that this happened just the way they say it did. That guy is awesome. Although, the Goof. The writers of this episode seem to be very worried we've forgotten that Scotty is Scottish.
Aye, aye, sir. And, have a bonny trip.
Well, Scotty, now you've done it.
Aye, the haggis is in the fire for sure. That ties it. That Popinjay Fox went down a couple of minutes ago.
Okay, Scottish possum friends, McPossums, if you will. Do Scots actually use Bonnie in that manner anymore? Do they use it at all even? I mean, Rabbie Burns, okay, fine, but like modern Scots? And I know that Popinjay ain't specifically Scottish, but it comes from Middle English, so it was clearly put in there with the same purpose as them other things, which is to point a giant tartan and thistle-covered arrow at Scotty with the words, "Note, this individual comes from Scotland," written on it. You know what? Let's ask my cousin, Possum Mac. Hey, Mac, what did you think of all of this sudden, supposedly very Scottish dialogue coming from our boy Scotty here? I'd say it was maybe a bit over after bugger again. Fair clarity in old Clush McClaver and tartan paint piss, which fair gives me the dry bog. But you know what? Have I had a fond wee nudge for Scotty, aye? And yours dayin' but tip my bonnet to the late big man himself, Jimmy Doohan. Great blood, that yen. Ah. Right. See? Yeah, thanks, Mac. Hey, Rob, mind yourself. Moving on. So there's this scene.
Captain.
Yes, Mr. Scott.
All personnel?
All personnel. We'll transport up trained Eminians to assume support positions. Those are my orders, Mr. Scott.
I put this in Goof, even though there's actually a good production explanation for this, but we go to this weird mimicry well a lot in this series. We've already seen the android Ruck able to mimic the voices of the Captain, Roger Corby, and Chapel, and we'll see at least 2 more examples of this later on, one of which is completely out of the blue and without any kind of justification. Yeah, I'm talking about you, Kalis the Unforgettable, in the Savage Curtain. And this one seems to be a lot like the Kalis one, but for one behind-the-scenes detail. It wasn't originally supposed to be that Anon 7 is a killer impressionist. We start the scene looking at a computer thing. What was supposed to happen was there was going to be a speaker pointed at the communicator, and Anon was going to be speaking into a microphone, making it obvious that it was the computer that was mimicking Kirk's voice here. But the director didn't get that from what was in the script, and he shot it with Anon sitting in front of a computer but speaking directly into the communicator with Kirk's voice, making it look like he has this weird and arbitrary talent or superpower without any explanation whatsoever. That was very weird. So, let's talk about General Order 24. Normally, this kind of thing would be in Ruminations, but in this case, this is so uncharacteristically and downright cartoonishly evil that I gotta put it in the Goof. Kirk is taken hostage, and if they put him to death, he's ordered the Enterprise to wipe out all life on the planet? Billions of lives, the vast majority of which don't even know any of this hostage crap is going on, just get murdered? One might say it's a bluff, but there's nothing in the episode to indicate that. After all is said and done, Kirk still has to cancel the order, so it's clear that wasn't no bluff. Between that and Ambassador Fox just wiping his ass with the Prime Directive and telling Kirk to ignore the sovereignty of Eminiar 7 and bust up in their business whether they want it or not, there's a lot of behavior from our great Federation in this episode that would make even Klingons at least give them the side eye. I don't like to break the timeline and talk too much about stuff that ain't happened yet on the show, but all of this does make me wonder how the Mirror Universe people handled this situation. I mean, even when the Halkins were telling them to smeg off, Mirror Kirk was only going to blow up a couple of their cities, not wipe them completely off the planet. What the hell? Ruminations. This is a really good episode, probably in a lot of people's top 10, and rightly so. As good an episode of Star Trek as it is, though, I wonder if it might not have been better as an episode of The Twilight Zone or something like that. There are a lot of Star Trek episodes that have that Twilight Zone feel to them, like Return of the Archons, for instance, but they work really well as Star Trek episodes because they fit with the characters and attitudes of the larger story. With this, though, there were a lot of cases where we had to fudge certain things just for this episode. As we talked about before, Fox's complete dismissal of Eminiar Stark wanting to stay away, there being even such a thing as General Order 24, which has to be one of the most un-Federation things I've ever seen in a Star Trek episode of any series. Section 31 ain't got nothing on GO24. And even little stuff like Scotty not being able to fire the ship's phasers while the shields were up. That ain't a thing any time other than this episode. But they all kind of needed to be in there for the story to work the way that it did. And let's acknowledge the 900-pound Salat in the room. The Prime Directive. It's showed up a couple of times before now, so we can't use the excuse that it ain't in the show yet, like with the Vulcan's lion thing. In fact, in Return of the Archons, there's a conversation between Kirk and Spock where Spock is worried that they're violating it by blowing up Landru, and Kirk justifies it by saying that Landru is causing this to be a stagnant society, and the Prime Directive only applies to societies exhibiting growth and development. I think we all agreed that he was right in that case, but can the same be said here? I mean, yeah, it's crazy that they're just offing themselves because of what is essentially a computerized game of Battleship. But that aside, the place looks vibrant and alive. They're developing, they're growing. They're just losing a couple of million people a year to the App Store. We might find that abhorrent, but who are we to impose our own values on another civilization, right? Ain't that the whole point of the Prime Directive? I seem to remember Picard having that problem when he ran into that situation between David Marcus and Joaquin from Star Trek II and their whole Felicium arrangement. I mean, Eminiar 7 wouldn't be able to join the Federation with this kind of thing in place, but they ain't asking, so that's irrelevant. So I think we got a clear-cut case of the first time we really see Captain Kirk blatantly violate the Prime Directive. Now, I hear some of you saying that it's established that Eminiar has interstellar travel capabilities. They just don't use it. And the Prime Directive only applies to pre-warp societies. Well, that ain't been mentioned yet with regards to the PD, but even if it had been, all it does is make it so that the Federation can contact the civilization once they get warp drive. It don't say nothing about making it okay to bust in and blow up computers and disrupt their way of life, as crazy balls as that way of life might be. Breaking the timeline again, acting like that policy is the Prime Directive over here, in the Next Generation episode Half a Life, Picard is bound by the Prime Directive not to intervene to save Major Winchester's life when his society demanded he nuke himself at a certain age. Aside from the reasons behind the self-microwaving, this is the same situation. So while I agree that Kirk did not violate the Prime Directive in Return of the Archons, he very much did in this episode. That being said, do I have a problem with that? I do not. Let's be honest, the Prime Directive is pretty stupid when we get right down to it. But that's a whole other video. Now, despite all of that, this really is a great episode. The concept is solid and the message is powerful. As you know, the Vietnam conflict was going full tilt by the time this episode aired. Star Trek writer David Gerrold talked about how the tallying and reporting of the casualties by the computer was meant to evoke imagery of the nightly newscasts at the time that would be putting up similar tallies of the casualties in Vietnam, arguably the country's first televised conflict. Episode writer Robert Hamner said that he got the idea for the script when he heard about the concept of the neutron bomb, a bomb that is theoretically capable of killing all the people in a wide area, but leaving all the buildings and infrastructure intact and untouched. It's almost worse than the destruction because it treats humans like some kind of infestation that needs to be wiped out. No muss, no fuss. This story also mirrors some of the other criticisms about modern warfare that were circulating at the time. Some people called Vietnam a, quote, push-button war, where people in the Pentagon or some base here in the untouchable United States could push a button and rain death and destruction on a group of people on the other side of the planet. Even just using fighter jets and bombers to drop napalm and other ordnance on people from hundreds or thousands of feet in the air and then fly back to base in time for drinks at the O Club. A lot of people felt, like Kirk said, that we're making war too easy. And the easier it gets, the less of an incentive there is to avoid it. It's a reasonable concern. Remember how World War I was supposed to be the war to end all wars? Well, ask Willie McBride how that turned out. So there you have it, a taste of Armageddon. What did you think of this episode? Let me know down in the comments down there. In the coming days, at some point, since there's still lots of editing to do on it as of this video's release, over in the member section, we'll be releasing a behind-the-scenes video about the production of this episode. Mostly I like to make sure everything eventually ends up on the public channel, but this one I'd like to keep in the member section just to keep it something special for the Possum friends. But hey, if you're not keen to join up on a long-term basis, I ain't got no problem with you paying for a month just to check out the video and then cancel. It's $5. Keep a watch on the community section of the channel. I'll announce when it's been released over there. So so make sure you got all your notifications turned on and you won't miss it. And we're getting those Expanse and Babylon 5 commentary tracks back up and running too, and those drop first for the members, so there's other benefits as well. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button on the video and subscribe to the channel if you ain't already, so you don't miss any of the excitement of watching stuff with me, Possum Rob. Next time, we finally get an answer to the question, what if somebody melted some weed gummies in Spock's Vulcan Plamique soup? Turns out, he becomes the happiest Vulcan this side of paradise. Until then, possum friends are awesome friends. Take it easy, alright? Later.